Hey, it's Nicole. Welcome back to the show. So excited to have you and our guest today, author Ben Guttmann. Ben is a marketing and communications expert and author of Simply Put, Why Clear Messages Win and How to Design Them. He's an experienced marketing executive and an educator on a mission to get leaders to more effectively connect by simplifying their message. We all could get a little more simple, couldn't we?
Hey, if you're an entrepreneur who usually fast forwards intros just like this one, this is the podcast for you.
Ben, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here, guys.
Welcome, Ben.
So glad to have you. Let's begin the same way we do with every single guest. How would you finish the sentence? You know you're an entrepreneur when?
Well, when you can't have any other job, right? I started my marketing agency 10 years ago and I sold it about a year ago. And I realized after I sold it that I wouldn't be very good at working for somebody else. Once you catch that bug, it's really hard to get rid of it.
Oh, so true. So true. It sounds like there's a little bit more of a story there. Tell me about a time that maybe wasn't so great of a team or a corporate environment. Is there something there?
I started my agency more or less right out of school, actually. So
Oh,
I was like a big student government nerd and I was doing all that stuff. And I was really kind of singularly focused on what I was doing like on campus. And I didn't spend a lot of time doing the internships and doing this and that. Thankfully, one of my professors came up to me at the end of the semester and said, I know you kind of want to maybe start your own thing. We need some help with digital. Maybe we can figure something out. And it turns out this guy ran a marketing agency that we ended up collaborating with. His office was in Westchester, so just outside of the city. And I got in my 1994 Honda Accord and drove up to that office, slapped our logo on the wall. And that was the beginning of the whole journey. So, we eventually got an office in Queens. We hired some employees. We got a bigger office. We hired more employees. And, starting from the local ice cream shop, local camera shop, we eventually worked our way to the NFL and Comcast and I Love New York and all these really great brands that we worked with over the course of a decade. Loved the whole process. But also at a certain point, me and my partners said, well, we've been doing it for a decade. Do you want to do it for the next decade? And nothing was wrong. I mean, we had great projects, great revenue. Everything was good. It's just that part of the entrepreneurial spirit, even in your own thing, wanting to do more things. And so that led us to the point where we decided to say, okay, let's hire a broker and let's see what's out there.
so we know about the book and certainly know your expertise to support other entrepreneurs. What do you do currently? Are you also consulting alongside of this?
So my book just came out. I mean, as we're speaking here 2 weeks ago today, and it's absolutely, a wonderful ride to do that. Anybody who's written a book knows that it's a long process, right? It started about a year and a half ago. I had an agent. We found a publisher. You go for the first draft, you go for the second draft, you go for the edits, you go for this. And then one day it shows up, a box shows up at your door and it's your publisher's delivery of your copy of the books.
Congrats.
And thank you. And it doesn't get old. Every now and then, walk past the bookcase and be like, oh, that's my name on it.
Oh, that's great.
So in addition to that, I've been teaching at Baruch College here in New York. I've been doing that for now. It's been a long time. And I love that. Teaching, if anybody's ever thinking about it, go do it. It's the absolute best thing. You have to want to do it because I'm not getting rich off of teaching as an adjunct at CUNY, but it is so rewarding in so many ways. And I really enjoy doing that. I just do that kind of one day a week. It's also selfishly a benefit too, because it's a great way to have a constant influx of if you need interns or if you want to refer people to your clients that they need employees, or if you want to invite guest speakers into your class. There's lots of selfish reasons to do it, certainly, but the selfless reason of teaching people is really great. But then, yes, I also do consulting. I've been doing a number of different types of consulting projects over the past year and a half since I sold the business. I'll tell you, I know it's the Serial Entrepreneur Show. At some point, I do want to start something else. Don't quite know what that is, but I've got a few ideas I've been kind of stewing around in my head.
I like it. I like it. So what's your story? What led you to entrepreneurship besides the college story? Let's go back a little bit before that. Was there a specific moment or event or experience that gave you the confidence to be like, I can do this?
So my childhood, my family, nobody had a job. It was the same thing. My dad, he was a defense attorney, has his own little general practice. My mother was a social worker and she had her own independent work that she did. Her father was a psychiatrist and had his own kind of practice. My dad's father, after he came over during the war, had a couple delis here in New York City, some Jewish delis. His father back in Czechoslovakia had, some grocery stores and that type of thing. And so there was nobody in my family that just had that 9-to-5 job. And nothing's wrong with that by any means. But what's really nice about that is you end up with a kind of quiet support network, and the emphasis on the quiet, because my other friends, my partners, other people I knew started a business, would go home for Thanksgiving or for whatever, and they would hear that little nag from their family of, well, when are you gonna give up on that thing? When are you gonna get a real job? Shouldn't you get a paycheck? Shouldn't you
Yes.
get a health
Oh my
insurance?
gosh.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
to not have that type of soft questioning at all times, it's hard to overstate how much that helps early on, especially when you're facing that uncertainty yourself, to not have other people also kind of continue to poke at you with that.
Right. Oh, that's so good. Because when
that's
you're
good.
driving the 94 Honda out there, you just need to go do that. They don't need to be like, if you had a real job, if you had oh, I can't stand that. Hey, just a reminder, our show is brought to you by SmartCookie Media, where we believe data tells a story, and not just any story, your business story. As a subscriber to the show or as a client, you'll get insights on profitable, data-driven marketing strategies that work for you and your business, your industry, not some cookie cutter trends. No, ideas that are led by your customer data so you know they'll work for you. Connect with me on LinkedIn or Instagram to learn more. Everything's in the show notes. Now, let's get back to the show. Ben, because you support entrepreneurs and founders and leaders, so business decision makers too, I know that your work, man, can speak to so many of us. I'd love for you to talk a little bit how you see those types turn new ideas into successful strategies. What do you see when that happens?
One thing that I've always found really inspiring, and the business folks that I know that I say, this person's really good at the business, are often people who are not particularly experts or had a preconceived passion about the thing that they're doing. They're just really good at being a problem solver and seeing opportunity and taking it. I had a boss when I was a teenager who ran a company that bought and sold used diagnostic imaging equipment like MRIs and CAT scans and X-rays, those type of things. This guy had no training in that space. He had no previous knowledge in that space, but he saw the opportunity. He said, hey, you know what? These machines cost like $500,000, $1 million, whatever it is. And if I can find a used one for $500,000 I could buy somewhere, and I can sell it to somebody for $700,000 somewhere, I only have to make a few of those sales a year. That becomes a pretty big business. He saw the opportunity in the market and he developed a company that did gangbusters on that. It was great.
Yeah.
So
And he also had a couple cool million available.
Yeah, it worked out really nice. What he did really well was, at least in the beginning, he didn't have a warehouse. And so the whole business was just identifying, okay, I'm going to find the equipment somewhere in the country. That was my job. I was basically a glorified telemarketer. I had to call up all the different hospitals and the MRI centers or whatever around the country, along with my other, teenage knuckleheaded coworkers. We offered to buy their used equipment if they're trying to get rid of something. And then his salespeople would go out at the same time and try to sell the thing that we just found. And he'd just coordinate the transportation for it instead of having a warehouse. When people see an opportunity and they can make something work out of it, I've always been really inspired. The other thing in that same vein that I really like is, so I have another mentor who we worked with them a number of times over the years, that he runs a PR firm. And the PR firm specializes in wine and spirits. Did he want to get into wine and spirits at the beginning? No, he had no intention of getting into wine and spirits. But you get one project in that space, and then it turns into 3 projects in that space, and that turns into 10 projects in that space. And all of a sudden, you're just focusing on this one area.
Right.
And so you see where the specialty is taking you and you ride that wave. Now he's an expert in it, right? Now he hires people that are experts in various niches in that business.
Is he Gary V with Wine Library? Just asking.
No,
I was
he's
like,
not.
that's
He's
exactly
not.
what we're
There's
all
that.
thinking. The listeners are thinking it. It's
But he said PR firm, so I nixed him out right away. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a fun guy to know because every time you go to his office, you leave with like 6 bottles of wine that are very, very nice, and say, "Well, they're great."
I need better friends. I just thought about
Yeah,
this real quick.
Yeah.
I was
You know
going to
what?
say the same thing, Matt. I never leave with anything cool. Not even anyway, incredible. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. You went from like an arbitrage story that totally sounded like Gary Vee then to like wine and spirits. And I was like, wow, yeah, there's a chance.
I think you identified something really interesting though, Ben, and that is, you said you really do find that some of the best business people are people who, are not necessarily completely passionate or the expert at that field. So many times when we're so passionate about what we do, and we're the expert in our field, we get so trapped in what I call Busyville and teaching and everything else. And we just want everybody to love what we love. And you're not selling, you're not closing, you're not marketing, you're not running the business anymore because you're so happy about the one thing that you're the expert in. Nicole knows this. That's why I eventually transitioned more in estate planning. I saw a need for it. It went hand in hand with some of my real estate practice. And it wasn't something I ever loved. I never once sat back. Nicole knows me back from undergrad. She never once heard me say, I think I'm going to sell everything, go off to law school so I can do wills and trust someday. But by me disconnecting from the emotional aspects of other areas of law that I truly do have a passion for, I became a little bit more, I guess you'd say, more of a better business person than just a lawyer by adding
Yeah.
that practice and supplementing my practice with that. So it totally makes sense what you're saying.
Yeah. It's hard to balance it sometimes, right? Because you do want in some ways to follow your passion and say you enjoy the work that you're doing, but it has to kind of meet in that Venn diagram of like opportunity as well, right? And so
Sure.
we ended up in our agency specializing in two different verticals. You can divide it in a third, a third, a third. We did a lot of work in publishing. We did a lot of work in tourism, and then everything else was like a mixed bag. We did, I Love New York and Grand Central and that type of stuff in tourism. We worked with all the different publishing houses like Penguin and Hachette and everybody else in the publishing space. But then the other bag was, NFL and Nature Conservancy and all this other really cool stuff. But you have to have some sort of interest. If you really want to love doing it on a daily basis, you have to at least be like, okay, or find a way to love the stuff that you're doing a lot of times. Tourism's great. I love doing work in tourism because it just seems that everybody I've ever met that works in tourism marketing kind of like they get it. They're just like, I'm in the best job ever. On your point though, one other little anecdote I'll share. There's a guy I know that runs an IT firm, been very successful. I think he has like 100 employees. He doesn't know anything about IT. He knows enough to like sell and to hire, but he doesn't know how to solve the IT problems. And he said, this is intentional. I don't want to know anymore because if I know anymore, I'm going to be tempted to just do it myself. If a client calls, I'll be like, let me go solve your problem for you. But by forcing yourself to be in that area, which is opportunity, not passion, he's able to say, hey, you know what? My passion is the building the business part. It's not necessarily the IT part.
Yeah. Yeah. All those stories just remind me that it's about action, right? It's about someone seeing opportunity and then taking action on it. Yeah. So let's talk about the book.
Certainly. So the book is called, simply put, Why Clear Messages Win and How to Design Them. So this whole project started with a question that is kind of the question you try to answer when you're in a marketing firm. It's the question my students would ask. It's a question that as like a user of the world, a consumer of the world, a participant that you also kind of subtly ask in the background, which is, why do some messages work when others don't? Why are some slogans effective? Why are some emails compelling? Why are some presentations great? Why does some political rallying calls work when others fall flat? In a marketing agency, that's what you're hired to do every day, right? Is to try to answer that question. But you answer the question via action a lot of times. Instead of really knowing like what the answer is, you know how to intuitively kind of figure it out. But only when I sold the agency and I was able to take a step back was I able to like investigate what the answer to that question was. And it turns out that the answer is simple. Quite literally, it is simple. The messages that work, the messages that are more effective are simple, and those that are not as effective. If that's enough, then don't read the rest of the book, right? But somehow I ended up with a 208-page book about how to say things simply. How did that happen, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It turns out when you look into it, the why is surprisingly complex and deep. And then the how of how to activate on simplicity, how to get there is also a really interesting and deep topic. That's what you end up finding in here. The science behind, why it is that our brains respond to simple messages, why that is so hard for us to create them. And then the second half is my background's in design. I put on kind of the design hat and say, well, what are the design principles behind a simple message? And I've identified 5 of them, which I have in the second half of the book.
Wow.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So some examples would be Nike's Just Do It, right?
Exactly. Just do it. And, yes, we can. I do put these in the introduction. And it's funny. I almost regret a little tiny bit putting them kind of right front and center, because while we're certainly talking about slogans and taglines a little bit, that's a relatively small piece of the puzzle. It's more applicable to like a proposal or to an email or to a presentation or a pitch. That's kind of the meal, right? The slogan is a little bit of that kind of appetizer, whatever other metaphor you want to drop in on it. This is a book that'll live on a marketing shelf and that'll be certainly applicable if you're looking to make a good slogan somewhere. But it is something that'll be useful to anybody who's a leader, anybody who's an entrepreneur, an advocate, anybody who has the job to inform or persuade will certainly benefit from it. I'll give you some examples. So I mentioned kind of like the toolkit before, like the 5 pieces. I've identified through the research and the data, there's 5 principles to a simple message. Number 1 is beneficial. Is it, benefits, not features? What does it matter to the receiver? What's in it for them? Number 2 is focused. Are you trying to say one thing, or are you trying to say like 3 things in a trench coat, right? Like, it's about maintaining the focus on one thing. Number 3 is salient. Does it rise to your attention? Does it contrast? Does it stick out? Is it noticeable? Number 4 is empathetic. Are you speaking in the language of your receiver? Are you meeting them where they are emotionally, motivations, and of course, obviously the raw material of language? And then finally, minimal. Is it everything you need, but only what you need? Did you cut out all the superfluous parts and are you focusing on everything that's getting somebody to the destination? It's not like a step-by-step plan. It's not a checklist, but they're principles to look at as you're forming, if it is a slogan or if it is an email or if it's anything else in between, your messaging. So I'll give you an example. Let's talk about empathetic. So empathetic is like meeting me where I am and understanding my motivations and my state of being. I have had a bad string of luck with my dental health, right? I've always had bad cavities or root canals, those terrible stuff. And so I go to the dentist one day, my gums were killing me. And the dentist, is instead of his usual chiding, he says, well, you only have to floss the teeth you want to keep. And I said, well, fuck, that was it. So he immediately got me. That one little pithy line, he understood, okay, who am I? Where am I? And what do I have to say to this guy to get this point across? You only have to floss the teeth you want to keep. And I was like, okay, great. You got me. As opposed to another dentist, which might say something more kind of like, you should floss to prevent plaque buildup below the gum line, which is true. And, there's some, bits of that might be compelling, but that's not where I was. That's not where he needed to get to get his point across.
Oh, so good. So good. Now, I don't know that he was empathetic to your situation. Like, I don't think he was like understanding and, I've been there too. Yeah. But okay. I still like the message. Got it. Super clear.
I'll throw out another example. It's beneficial. If you are in marketing, if you are in sales, you will have hammered into your head from day one, people don't buy features, they buy benefits. There's a phrase or a saying from 20th century Harvard marketing professor Theodore Levitt. He says, people don't want a 1/4-inch drill, they want a 1/4-inch hole. They don't want the thing, they want what it does for them. I tell my students this every semester. If you don't remember anything else from this entire course, from this entire degree, if you remember this sentence, you're going to be better off than most people are who are professional marketers. Is that people don't buy features, they buy benefits. And what's an example of a kind of famous marketing tagline that was about benefits? Well, about 20 years ago, Apple introduced the iPod, and they didn't go out and say, hey, we have 4 gigabytes and we have this many pixels on the screen, this many megahertz, this many milliamps. They didn't say any of that. You can go find that somewhere. But what did they say? They said, it's 1,000 songs in your pocket.
Yeah.
Right? 1,000 songs in your pocket. That is a benefit. You understand what all those things mean. 4 gigabytes, I don't know what the hell that means. 1,000 songs.
I still don't. I mean, I still don't. I'm still like,
right?
How many songs is that?
Yeah. Minimal is the last piece of this. When I talk about minimal, it doesn't mean this is the fewest number of words, fewest number of sentences, fewest number of pages or slides. It means the least amount of friction. That's the thing that you want to minimize. Sometimes that does mean more words, pages, slides, et cetera, because that makes it an easier journey for somebody. Oftentimes, a smaller number of things, of units of words or whatever, is correlated with something being easier, but that's not necessarily a one-to-one relationship. I'll give you an example in minimal. How do you use words and phrases that have less friction, that are more understandable, that are easier to grapple with? So Michael Pollan, writer, he's had a bajillion best-selling books. He has a piece of nutrition advice, which is more potent than probably anything else you've ever heard. He said, eat food, mostly plants, not too much. Eat food, mostly plants, not too much. A lot of simple words, nothing's more than 2 syllables in there. If you were to kind of run these and see like how popular these words are, they're all right there in the top, 1,000 words. But when you compare this to something like what the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services says about how do you maintain healthy eating habits, they'll say, well, follow a healthy eating pattern across the lifespan. Well, what the hell does that mean? I mean, you get it, if you know those words and everything, but there's a lot of friction there. You have to understand, first of all, the healthy part of that, what's the layer beyond that? The word pattern, what is an eating pattern, and what is a lifespan? So all these things are a lot more complicated. They're different points, they're different bumps in the road that push people to get off your message instead of getting to the point, which is eat food, mostly plants, not too much, which immediately kind of gets you there.
Yeah.
Because there is a multi-billion-dollar industry called weight loss.
Right. Yeah.
And they complicate the heck out of that. When we could say it's calorie deficit, and instead there's multi-billion dollars with lots of messages. Hey there, busy movers and shakers. I get it. You're out there conquering the business world. hustling day in, day out? Well, guess what? We've got something to amplify your efforts, something that's about to make your entrepreneurial journey even more exciting. Introducing our podcast production services, your ticket to sharing your knowledge and stories without breaking a sweat. We know your time is gold. That's why our team of podcast pros will take the reins, handle all of the behind the scenes stuff. From brainstorming fun topics, introducing you to incredible guests, polishing up those episodes, repurposing your content so you can share among lots of platforms. We're here to turn your ideas into a podcast that's as easygoing as your favorite chat over coffee. Imagine establishing your expertise and your authority, making connections all across the globe in just minutes a month. And the fun doesn't end there. Our data-savvy approach gives you insights that will help you fine-tune your content and connect with your audience even better than before. So join forces with a crew that's as enthusiastic about your podcast as you are about your business. The SmartCookie Media crew. Let your voice resonate, your stories inspire, and your ideas spread like wildfire. Level up your personal brand through the magic of podcasting, whether you choose audio only or video too. Are you ready to dive into podcasting? Your journey to share your knowledge starts right here because it's your voice, your podcast with our expertise. SmartCookie Media, turning your stories into conversations. Since you're in tourism, I don't know if you designed any welcome signs into a state. Tell me, what do you think would be the most simply put, most important messages on a sign that is at the state border?
Oh, that's a good one. So my thoughts on tourism are you have to think about how does your destination fit into the life story of the traveler? Because that's what we're all doing, especially today where we're documenting and sharing our life story on Instagram and everywhere else. People go places for a lot of different reasons. And one of them is also to curate the image of who they are to themselves and who they are to the world. And so you want to have that in mind as you're doing it. To that end, it's important that the welcome messaging that you have does convey something that's unique about that place, because everything is kind of the same these days. How do you make your place feel like it has a distinct sense of place? And that can be, if you're in Texas, it says howdy, right? I'm in Queens, but if you cross over into Brooklyn, on the way out, it'll say forget about it. Like those type of things that add that local character are going to help fulfill that mission, which is how does this fit into somebody's life story?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. Our state just funded a very, very big proposal. And the thing that is not on the sign is anything to do with the word welcome. The state name is on the sign. And there's an uproar. I mean, we're in the Midwest. We're kind of hospitable, most of us. What they also missed when I see it is they missed opportunity to ask a couple focus groups, do a little testing, double check that people would be really, really mad about the word welcome missing. So
is this the more to discover one? I just Googled it. Is that the one?
Yeah, more to discover in Indiana.
In Indiana is the big
Indiana. Yeah, like it's So
I think that's one of those things that sounds really good when you're putting like something on in Photoshop or whatever. But one thing I talk about in the book is you want to talk to one person. Crowds don't exist. Every time you've ever bought something or voted for somebody or donated to something, it's because in your own head, you decided that you wanted to do that. So crowds don't exist. And that's not talking to one person. That's just like, this is a cool, pithy little line that's going to go up there. You want to have something that is saying, like welcome, as you said, is a direct kind of one-to-one piece. I just watched the Taylor Swift movie with my wife. She's a big fan. I appreciate her. I'm not as much of a Swift, but she is so good at making 70,000 people in that stadium feel like she's having that one-to-one conversation with them, as well as everybody in every movie theater across the country is still feeling like she's talking to you. This is, a sign that feels like it's missing that mark a little bit.
Yeah. So you've just inspired me because I've thought long about that. And most people want the word welcome back, but I think you just proved it could be howdy if that was nomenclature for your area. It could be forget about it.
Forget about it. But you are exactly.
We just could say see you later because we'll see you. See you later. Tell me, what is one of the key lessons that you've learned as an entrepreneur? Maybe it's a quote you find yourself saying again and again.
Okay. So this is related to being an entrepreneur, which is kind of also a bit of a life lesson. One of my favorite quotes in the last few years has been, and I'm going to butcher it, but is a ship is safe in port, but that's not why we build ships. Right?
Yes. But that's not what ships are for. Yes.
That's not what ships are for, right?
Yes. So good.
I like that quote so much that I made my wallpaper just a painting of a ship.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, wow.
Awesome. Yeah. So good.
Ben, how would you define your entrepreneurial success?
Oh, I mean, I'm under no illusion that anything I've ever done has been by myself. Either if it's with my business partners, if it's with people that have worked with us, my family, my friends, my education system, all that stuff. And so I'm just grateful for every piece of that.
Tell me, you wrote the book. So besides book promotion, what's next for you? Or is there a link you want to send us to? How does someone get in touch or hire you? Where do we find you?
Absolutely. If anybody's interested in chatting more or doing a speaking gig, something like that, you can reach me at benguttmann.com. Guttmann. It's 2 T's and 2 N's. Everybody misspells it all the time.
Does somebody
Also,
own the other version with just a single T and single?
there's a gentleman in Chicago who has Ben Guttmann at one end. Very nice guy. He sometimes forwards me email that's meant for me.
Very kind. You guys got to stick
He's a
together.
nice
Very
guy.
kind.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. Midwestern
yeah.
nice. See?
But if you want to get a free chapter of the book, it's also there. Drop your email. I'll send you a free chapter, and hope you enjoyed that. And if you do, go get the rest of the book.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. This has been a lot of fun.
Hey, it's Nicole, and that's the end of the interview. But stick around. This is the part where Matt and I break it all down and give you our favorite takeaways. Listen in.
Hey, Matt. So we just got done talking with Ben Guttmann, and there was a lot there. I felt like I was in a master class with a professor. How about you?
Yeah. Simply put, Nicole, what could you boil it down to? Simply put.
Simply put, your message has to speak to a life story that crowds don't exist.
There you go. Crowds
it.
don't exist.
Whether it's your sales deck, whether if you're making a commercial, a billboard, a digital marketing campaign, your pitch deck, your invoice, whatever it is, it's got to be dwindled down to someone's life story. I thought was so powerful because crowds don't exist. Well, folks, if you're listening, you know what we always say?
Keep listening.
You've been listening to the Serial Entrepreneur Show, produced by the team here at SmartCookie Media.